If there was a state law that said that it was a crime to leave the state to get an abortion, and if you, as the state attorney general or as a district attorney, wanted to investigate that, you could seek evidence just like you could in any other case. Police are entitled to investigate crimes.
During the Jim Crow era, when we heard states' rights, it meant states limiting the rights of people, Black people, their rights of movement, their rights of access. And now we think of states' rights as states expanding access to things like abortion rights, reproductive rights, the rights of LGBTQ people. How large is this going to be a player in the next 3 years, 11 months of the Trump administration and some of the cases and precedents that it's trying to bring, in some cases through red states, to enact its policies?
Yeah, I mean, so here's a really interesting aspect of this issue. In Dobbs, when the Supreme Court took away the federal guarantee of abortion rights to women, it said, we are leaving it up to the states. That's sort of the classic states' rights argument. Every state can do its own thing. Now we're seeing a move, and Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, has suggested she might be a part of this to sort of nationalize the opposition to abortion. There's an old law called the Comstock Act that prohibits mailing anything that's used to perform an abortion or any information about abortion and other scandalous material. Like under the Comstock Act, women can't mail material about family planning. That would all become a federal crime. If Pam Bondi decides to go back to enforcing the Comstock Act, which has been sort of left by the wayside for the last 100 years, that would mean a national ban on abortion. And yet we have a Supreme Court that has told us, oh no, this is state by state. Same deal with medication abortion. The overwhelming majority of abortions performed in this country use medication like mifepristone and mifepristol. And instead of letting every state decide what to do, there's now a move on to let states that want to ban medicated abortion also try to ban it in an extraterritorial way. So Louisiana has now indicted a New York doctor who mails medication to women in Louisiana. And we will see these cases go up to the court, and we will learn, I think, to your point, Pat, just what states' rights mean in this day and age.
Perhaps that doctor can never travel to Texas, but if the powers that be determine that this is, as you say, a nationwide thing, that doctor may be in great jeopardy even in the state of New York.
Well, so far, and I can't remember if it was Governor Hochul who said this or another state official, but they, in essence, said, we're not going to turn over a citizen of the state of New York to Louisiana for prosecution. And in fact, New York is one of a handful of states that had passed a law that specifically said that they would not turn over their citizens for prosecution in this sort of situation. But that sets up the conflict that sooner or later, if not this term, 2-3 years down the road, we'll head to the United States Supreme Court for a decision.
Early in the 2020 campaign, there were public service spots that were put on the air about a woman and her mother being stopped by law enforcement out driving a car, and they were going to another state to get an abortion, and they were both arrested or taken into custody because of this, which seemed, again, far-fetched. But Ruth's question now is about the federal crime for the government checking women's email, checking to see whether they got medication about abortion, even if they were discussing it, monitoring menstrual cycles. The privacy presumption was pretty much gutted after Roe v. Wade was thrown out, I would think, especially on this matter. And even Ruth Bader Ginsburg said it was a wobbler. It was not maybe a strong foundation. But would any imputed right to privacy protect women under circumstances like this?
Well, I think what you're talking about, this was this ad. It was a fictitious ad. It wasn't something that it had actually happened. It actually, I think, was set in Alabama. And the premise was that state prosecutors, states attorneys generals in states like Alabama would prosecute women who tried to travel out of the state of Alabama to a state where abortion was legal in order to access care. That is a very realistic possibility. And that leads to the question of what sort of investigative devices could prosecutors and police use to investigate women for those crimes. I think now we're talking about state prosecutions for the most part, because these are state laws. And yes, I think realistically, in the right circumstances, they could seek subpoenas or other court orders to access people's emails, text messages, other communications, just like you can do in a drug trafficking case or a bank robbery or any other sort of lawsuit, where you can access people's communications. If there was a state law that said that it was a crime to leave the state to get an abortion, and if you, as the state attorney general or as a district attorney, wanted to investigate that, you could seek evidence just like you could in any other case. Police are entitled to investigate crimes.